Hello and welcome to the Save the Crafty YouTuber video hop part 2. This is 5 days full of fantastic crafty tutorials from talented creators around the world. Today I'm sharing a fun drop shadow technique using a stencil and some embossing powder, and I'll give you all the details on how you can win some prizes and where to go afterwards at the end of the video. But for now, just let's get on with the project. I've got a piece of white cardstock here. I've cut this to 5 3/4 inches square. I'm going to mount it onto a 6-inch card blank, so I wanted it to be slightly smaller. And I've got a stencil here. I love this, like a cascading stars. And I'm going to hold this in place with a little bit of washi tape. You can use some masking tape if you've got some, just some low-tack stencil tape. And I'm getting it as far down in one corner as I can here, because for this technique I need to be able to move it slightly. But for now, that's where I want it to be, and I'm going to just hold that in place with a bit of washi tape so it doesn't move while I'm inking through it. Just need a bit on a couple of sides there. That should probably do it. And I'm going to begin by using Hickory Smoke Distress Ink foam applicator tool. You can use any colours you want. I like the Hickory Smoke. It's not quite so harsh as black. And because I'm creating a shadow, obviously I want it to be a fairly dark colour. So just gently using a circular motion, going through the stencil with the Distress Ink. I'm just going to complete that. Just making sure the stencil doesn't move. Once you're happy that you've got all of the design covered there, we'll just take the stencil off. Just save that bit of tape because I'll use that again in a moment. There you can see the design inked through onto the cardstock. Just want to clean this off. I've got a baby wipe here. Just want to get the ink off it before I move on to the next step. So now that's clean, I'm going to bring my piece of cardstock back in again. And make sure that this is dry. If you think you need to give it a bit of a blast with the heat tool, you can do. Distress ink takes a little longer to dry than some others, and it does need to be dry for this next step. For this next step, I'm going to just swipe over my cardstock with an anti-static bag before I start. We're going to be using some embossing powder, and actually the one I'm using is one with glitter in. And I just want to be sure that I don't get any stray bits when I come to do the heat embossing. And I always feel that using the anti-static bag it just prevents that from happening. It's a really good investment to have. So now I'm going to replace my stencil, but instead of putting it exactly where it was before, I'm going to offset it slightly. So we're going to move it up a little bit and across to the right a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot, but just enough that when we ink through it this second time and emboss, we get to see a shadow of that original inking that we did. So I want to make sure that it stays in place. So we're going to tape it back down again. I'm just going to tape it on all sides this time actually, because I need to be dabbing through it with the ink pad. And for this I'm using the Wow embossing pad. It's a clear embossing pad specifically for using with embossing powders. You can use a Versamark. There are a couple of others on the market. But this one, I like it. It's a really good one. So I'm going to dab it straight through the stencil onto the cardstock. Pressing down quite well because we want it to go through the design in the stencil. And once you're happy that you've got the coverage there, you're going to take the stencil away. Don't forget you need to give this a wash, get rid of this embossing ink. I'm just going to bring in a scrap of paper, and the embossing powder I'm using today is from Wow Powders. It's called Vintage Candy Cane, and it's really nice. It's got red and gold glitter in there. It's just nice and sparkly and colourful. Really good for Christmas cards as well as everyday cards. Just sprinkle that over. Tap off the excess. We'll just tip that back into the pot. Move that out of the way. And I'm going to take my heat gun and heat emboss this to melt the embossing powder. Now that we've finished embossing our background, I hope you'll agree this makes a really cool effect, almost as if those stars are floating off the page. We need a sentiment or a focal image or something, and I've decided to use one of these Pinkfresh Studios stamps. This is the Dream On set, and I'm going to use the Follow Your Dreams, They Know the Way sentiment. And I've die cut a circle of white card because I thought a circle would be quite nice to fit in there. It fits with that stencil design. So we're just going to take the stamp and put it on a block and stamp it. And I don't want to use black. We used a grey in the background here, so I'm using a watering can archival ink. It's a nice grey. It's still going to show up well, but it's not quite so harsh as black. So just inking that up, positioning it over my die cut, pressing down. I've also die cut a circle of a gold card. This is like a matte finish, just slightly larger, and that can frame it. And I'll just get my glue. This is just some, this is my Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue, and I put it in these little fine tipped bottles. It just makes it really easy to apply. You can use whatever glue you've got or some double-sided tape. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to mat that onto there. And I think I've cut myself a mat of the gold card. I've also cut one of the red, and I think I actually want to put this on a double mat. So I'm going to just trim it slightly. So I'm going to take another 1/4 inch off one of the sides horizontally and vertically and make this 5.5 inches square. So now that's trimmed, and that'll fit nicely onto a red mat and then onto a gold one and onto my card blank. So again, I'm just going to use my glue. So you can use tape, you can use foam tape if you want some dimension on the layers. I tend not to make my cards too bulky now. If they have to go through the post, there's less risk of them being damaged if they're flat. They're also cheaper to post if they're flat. And the difference soon mounts up if you're sending quite a number of them. Just position that on there. I'm going to add my sentiment. I'm going to pop that onto my card blank and finish with a couple of gems, I think. I love the effect that this technique creates. These stars seem to float up off the surface of the page, and it does deceive the eye. It works well with any good solid geometric design of stencil, not so well with intricate and fancy ones, but try it out with what you've got and see if you can create some fun effects as well. Don't forget, there's a bucket load of prizes to be won along this video hop, and you need to leave a comment below to be entered into the draw to win one. Please state if you're in the USA or international, as certain prizes are only available in certain countries. Also, if you enjoyed this and want to see more from me, then consider subscribing to my channel. I try and put out regular tutorials about every week, time permitting, and when inspiration strikes. But for now, happy hopping. The link that you need is below. Go off and see the next tutorial, and hopefully I'll see you again here soon. Bye!